Welcome to CarePOD, a safe place to educate, inspire, and renew the caregiver. Listen in with our host, Dr. Kipley Bell, as she interviews different experts along the caregiving journey.
So I am sitting with Randi Casey. She represents Goldsteins Funeral Home, and we were able to speak briefly about this space and what it looks like today, interfaith families and how they approach funeral planning and the like. Listen in. Okay, so I'm here with Randi to discuss funeral planning. Um, Really a boss in the female mortician-led space. Really excited to have a power player that can discuss all things funeral planning. Give us some guidance as far as this chapter of our lives that we all have to take, especially as caregivers when we are preparing, our questions, concerns for our families at end stages. So thank you for being here, and tell us about the funeral home, where you're located, and a little bit about your journey in this space.
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Randi Goldstein-Casey, and I'm part of Goldsteins, Rosenberg's, Raphael-Sacks Funeral Home. We're located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the East Oak Lane section of Philadelphia, which is on the Montgomery County border. And we're also located, in Southampton, Pennsylvania, which is in Bucks County. I was literally born into the business. My grandfather and great uncle started it. I started working for the funeral home when I was 18 and decided when I graduated with my bachelor's degree that I wanted to go on to mortuary school because I really liked what we were doing, like the thought of helping people through a rough time. So I've been a licensed funeral director since I was 25, and I've been one of the owners of the company in recent years. I've moved up in the ranks.
Wow, good for you. Good for
Thank
you.
you.
So, what struck me about the information submitted about the funeral home and your business is the statement about families, interfaith families, and the different requests that come in around cremation, around what the service will look like. And so that was a curious point for me in terms of what's trending, what you're seeing. Especially the financial times that we're in, people opting for lesser or cumbersome costs around putting their loved ones to rest. So, can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. In our industry nationwide, cremation is rapidly growing for many reasons, and one of the number one reasons is cost factor. It's less expensive. Due to the fact that we are mainly a Jewish funeral home, we serve the Jewish population in our area. Our cremation rate is well below average, but it is still growing. And funerals have become more personalized, whether it's a cremation or a burial. People want to have speakers, they want to show videos, there's sometimes music played. So services, in effect, have gotten longer, which makes it difficult when you're trying to schedule and accommodate everyone depending on, we run our funerals out of our funeral homes mainly, or we do them at the cemeteries. There are sometimes we go to synagogues or churches and stuff, but um going back to your question about interfaith, there's no such thing as like an interfaith funeral per se, but we deal with interfaith families. So
Okay.
a lot of times we'll get a call from the person who is not Jewish that their Jewish partner, spouse, whatever has passed, and they want to know how to do a funeral and respect their wishes. And of course, we walk them through it. But the other side of the coin is we can do the non Jewish service as well. It's not a problem. And people don't
Mhm.
realize that. And people can be buried together at cemeteries, whether you're in a mixed marriage or not. So those are questions that we help them get through and explain how the process works.
Yeah. So, tell me about the cost, comparing and contrasting the current cost of a cremation versus a funeral itself and burial, and where things are trending.
So an average funeral today can be anywhere between like $8,000 and $12,000. We give a ballpark. There's no way to give you an exact because everyone picks different things.
Right.
Depending on if they're having the service in our facility, at the cemetery only, at a different facility like a synagogue or a church. The casket is a huge factor when it comes to burials, depending on what you pick. And my charge does not include cemetery charges. They have their own charges, and sometimes does not include clergy, depending on if you're a member, depending on if you're getting the person to officiate or we are. Cremation, there's different factors in that too. There's cremation with memorial services, cremation with rental casket services. Um, they vary from, let's say, $4,000 on up in general. And that's also the variables in that would be, do they want newspaper notices? How many death certificates? If it's a memorial or rental casket service, do they want limousines? Like again, there's all variables. So we ballpark it until we sit down with you specifically and
Right.
go through everything. There's no way to get an exact.
Right, absolutely. But in terms of someone who's saying, you know what, I don't want this burden to fall on my children or my family, how much should I be planning for? It sounds to me like, at least upwards of 20K to satisfy all of these variables and these items aside. Do you sit with families to pre-plan to, I know that there's been some funeral, actually cemeteries even that do like payment plans, et cetera. What are those offerings?
We work with our families, again, it's handled differently on each situation, but, for the most part, you prearrange at today's price to save money down the line. We can't guarantee what we call third-party charges, which would be death certificates, newspaper notices, clergy. So sometimes there's a little bit of a difference when the person actually dies. And depending on the family that we're sitting with and what they need, we give them time to pay it out, up to a year, 2 years. Some of them pay it very quickly because they're doing what they call a spend down theory to get into a nursing home or a facility, assisted care. Um, so that again, it's not an exact science. It varies which each family we sit with. But yes, we work with you and we understand it's a lot of money. And, and if you're buying cemetery ground and you have to take care of all that, it's even more money. We get it. It's a
It keeps
lot.
going. So
Yeah.
when you say 1 to 2 years, this is post mortem or this is pre?
No,
pre-
pre. So when you're prearranging a service, a lot of times we give the family 1 year to pay us in full.
Mhm.
Um, if they should die during that year, the person who the prearrangement is for, we usually require payment at the time of the funeral or, quickly thereafter. Yeah, we don't give the same thing for an actual what we call an at need funeral. But then again, it all depends on the situation as well. You
Mhm.
know, we will work with our families. We
So
get it.
yeah, yeah.
Let's go shopping. Check out impactfulcaregiving.store. There, you will find everything from assisted devices to comfort care items and even tech to support your aging loved one and relieve a little caregiver stress along the way.
So being comfortable clearly around death, how do you have this conversation, internally, even in your own life, your own family, your girls, how do you say, you know, what's your narrative? Not to give you any leading adjectives. What's your narrative around uh caskets and dead bodies and so forth?
You mean as in encouraging people to do a prearrangement or just in general?
Just in general, when you're speaking, when even I would assume you've already had this conversation with your own children by the nature of the beast. But or even when you're sitting with multi-generational families that are bringing grandkids in, et cetera, what's the conversation look like?
So growing up in this, and my kids growing up in this, when you're dealing with your own personal family, it's very matter of fact. Like if there's no hiding it. Like they're used to it. It doesn't even faze us. When talking to other family, like, people outside of my family, then you have a little, it's a little softer. You kind of you you're not as blunt. The narrative would be like, it depends on the situation. Like people ask all the time, like I say, you need to bring clothing in for your mom to be dressed in. They're like, well, what should we dress her in? I'm like, you can dress her in anything you want. And sometimes if they're kind of getting stressed out about it, I'll lighten the mood and say, well, I already told my kids I want to be in a tank top, shorts, and flip flops because I know where I'm going and it's going to be hot. Like just to, break up and it gets people to laugh. It gets them to relax. And it's like, whatever you want them in. You want them in, a dress, you want them in pants, you want them in a t-shirt. It doesn't matter. Like the formality of it is gone. Like it's whatever you choose is perfect.
Mhm.
Um, Talking about caskets, that doesn't really come up in conversation. People might ask what the cost factor is, but they don't really ask that much. I mean, people, when they find out you're a funeral director, tend to either ask very silly, funny questions like, has this ever happened? Or they kind of steer clear of it because it creeps them out.
Yeah,
So,
or the other, I would think. Yes, yes. So,
one of the things I get asked a lot, though, is how do you approach the conversation with aging parents or spouses about making a prearrangement?
yeah.
So, and if your parents are dead set against talking about it, one of the things you can say to them is, so have you and dad decided like where you want to be buried? Like a cemetery, like just start the conversation that way. And they say, oh, well, we want to be cremated. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, now I know what you want. And then, and then, go from there. Like, have you ever thought about, let's get everything down while you're still able to make choices? And, other times we get a lot of phone calls from parents saying that they don't want the burden to fall on their children and they want to take care of everything. And then we say to them, please make sure your children know.
Yeah, yeah.
And they don't want to hear about it. They'll say, oh, we don't want to talk about this. And basically just say, well, we don't have to talk about it, but here's the phone number you need to call when it happens. It's all taken care of. So
Mhm.
there's that I think is more the narrative in my world than actually discussing, what I want or what my kids, that really doesn't come up. I mean, my parents are still living and I'm not quite sure what they want.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. So, are you all still in this industry doing the, funeral booklets that actually help guide that conversation? Like, the pre-planner, if you will, that has, oh, what music do you want to play? What, et cetera.
We
Do
have that. We can email like a letter out to families showing all of our prices and what exactly entails in making a pre-arrangement. Um, you can go on our website, which is goldsteinsfuneral.com, and check that out. But if you contact Goldsteins, Rosenberg, Raphael-Sacks at any point, whether you email us, call us, we can send you whatever you need to help start the process. We have a couple different ways of sending stuff to
Okay.
families.
And do you do remote services of any kind still post-COVID?
You mean like Zoom and live stream?
Yeah.
All yeah, all we zooming services outside of our building. We do that probably every day. It's not going away. People want a recording of it. We record them. Live stream was a thing prior to COVID because, people have family members out of the country, out of the state, and they're not making it in. But obviously, it's grown since COVID, and we actually live stream every service. We don't always send out a link, but we have a copy of it. So if the family comes back and asks, unless they specifically say they don't want it recorded, and then we don't. But yeah, we have it, and that's not gonna go anywhere. If anything, it's gonna actually keep growing in the funeral industry.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. It's important conversation, and it is a constant reminder that we do need to sit with our families, handle our business, walk out decision making in real time, in real living time. So
Okay.
we're very happy to have had you as a guest. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yes. And tell us again how a guest can find you if interested.
You can look up our funeral home online. Our funeral home name again is Goldsteins, Rosenberg's, Raphael-Sacks. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We have a website that's Goldsteins with an S funeral one word.com. And you can always contact us by phone. It's you want me to, I can give you the phone number if you like. 215-927-5800. We work 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There's always someone answering the phones. You always get one of us. And anyone wants any information, we'll happily regular mail it, email it. We do arrangements via Zoom even, or over. You don't even have to come in. We can do it by phone and by a DocuSign if that makes it easier for a family. But
wow.
we're always open and there for you if you have questions or concerns.
Okay, well, thanks so much again.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Take care.
Great information right from the source. For more information on how to caregive like a boss, check out impactfulcaregiving.com. Want to be a guest on the show? Contact us at CarePOD at impactfulcaregiving.com.